All right, just to recap here real quick. This is the company I'm using for the brake lines. Let's see, driver's passenger side. I think it was like, I can't remember the price. They were super cheap. I got them off of eBay. I mentioned it earlier in the video, but pre-bent, pre-wrapped, pre-terminated, and have the ferrules and everything. All you gotta do is put them in. So we're gonna get these installed and then keep pressing on with the brakes. All right, getting the driver's side brake line in. See, it's into the block, and then we got it into the wheel cylinder on the back. So, funny thing is that because of this protective wrap they put on it, this other coil that's on the outside of the line, it's great that they put that on there because it just helps protect the line. But I can't get a line wrench over it. Because the line wrenches have that a smaller opening so it can wrap further around the ferrule compared to a normal box wrench. So because of that extra line being on there, or extra protective wrap being on there, I can't use a line wrench. So can't take my own advice, but just be aware of it. If you see that, you might have to use a regular box wrench. Going on, it's not that big of a deal, but if I have to take these off again, it might become an issue because I can't get full coverage but on the ferrule to turn it. But these box wrenches will do in a pinch if you got it. Otherwise, I'm going to be back to cutting the line and then taking it off with the line wrench. But so with these, they're pre-bent, and I got to tell you, at least with this side, I didn't have to do hardly anything to it. Started on this side, got it most of the way in, almost all the way in, because if you tighten it down, it's going to keep the line from being able to move a little bit. You see it there moving. So you don't want to tighten it down all the way. So I got it most of the way in, came over to this side on the axle, started to tighten it down, and I really only had to kind of just press on it just to get it to line up right with the threads. So very, very impressed with this company. Same deal with the ones on my truck. When I got those as well, I hardly had to do any type of bending past what they have already done. So everything's going in smooth, everything's going in great. So you want to make sure that this line isn't actually touching the axle. You can kind of see like it's touching right here where my finger's at. You don't want to have it touching. You want to have it just kind of float right above the axle, unless of course it's got a retainer like the other side does that actually pins it down against the axle so it doesn't vibrate. This one's short enough, I think it's got enough bends in it, it's not going to vibrate. But you just want to have a little bit of clearance between the axle tube or axle housing tube and your brake line. So just run along here, check everything. If it is rubbing a little bit, like right here, it's real close. Right here, just give a little bit of a pull on it. Don't go hooga-dooga on it. We'll just give a little bit of a pull and get it away a little bit. And then find a sweet spot where you can feel comfortable that it's pretty much not touching anywhere. So right about there looks good. So, let's see if I can show you. There you go, got clearance there. And I can see daylight through underneath most of it. So we're gonna rock that and just kind of hold it in place with your finger. Just kind of wedge your finger under there just enough to keep it from moving as you tighten it down. So we'll get this tightened up and do the other side. All right, there we have it. See the line coming in from the other side. I did have to do a little bit of tweaking on the longer one from the passenger side, which, you know, to be expected, but it actually was not, hardly had to do any tweaking at all. I basically had to just, the bend going over the pumpkin was a little tight, so basically I just had to stretch it a little bit towards me to get it to line up properly. So I basically started over here on the passenger side. Like I said before, I got this one started not super tight, then went and put this on, which is just a retainer. There's pre-drilled holes and everything from the factory for this. Got that in, kind of loosely lined everything up, and then tightened down this side, and then worked my way across. So can't really see very well, but see, I got space all the way around the pumpkin, everywhere I need. So super impressed with this company. They do pretty good work. This is the second time I've used them and haven't had any major issues whatsoever. The ones on my truck I've had for about 2 years. They're still going strong. So these ones, especially since they've got this protective wrap on them compared to the other line, hopefully that'll help these last a little longer than the ones that were on here. And then we'll start bleeding. So one thing with this, because the line broke completely open and lost all the fluid out of it, there's a couple different things I might have to deal with. First thing I'm going to do is crack open this wheel cylinder and fill up the reservoir and just let it bleed. Because of gravity, air, all that jazz, the reservoir is at the highest point of the car right now. It's in the engine bay. It's above everything else. Gravity will push the fluid, as long as it has somewhere to go, out to where it needs to go. Plus, since I have there's air in there and the back end is up, because I didn't have to do anything with the front. If I had to do something with the front, I probably would have this thing level and just let it do its magic. But since I have the rear up, air always travels up, so hopefully that's going to do a lot of the bleeding for me, and I won't have to deal too much with fighting it to get it bled. So basic automotive theory, unless it's changed since I stopped working at a dealership, when you're bleeding brakes, you basically want to do the passenger rear. You basically want to go furthest from the reservoir to the closest from the reservoir when you're bleeding. So you want to go to the passenger rear and bleed that first, then the driver's rear, then passenger front, and then driver's front. In that order, bleed as much as you can out, and then just keep doing that cycle as long as you need to till you get a good pedal feel. I've run into issues in the past where I've bled and it didn't feel right, especially if there's ABS systems involved. Sometimes you have to get a scan tool and go through that process first and then do the actual physical bleeding. I know at the dealership we actually had a pressure bleeder that would go on top of the reservoir and actually force fluid through all the systems, ABS, all the cylinders, all the calipers, and actually put a little bit of pressure behind it, so that would take care of a lot of the issues. But we'll see how this goes. I disabled the ABS because my mom really didn't like it. She's almost in her 70s and didn't really like the ABS feel, so I got rid of it. I just disconnected the pump and pulled the light out of the dash. So it doesn't have ABS now, but the mechanism is still in there. I haven't had the time or the desire to pull the pump all the way out and re-plumb everything. But so let me show you what we're gonna do. So this is a 96 XJ. Here's your reservoir, master cylinder, vacuum booster, vacuum line, and then, or brake booster. Some people just call it a brake booster, but it's based off of vacuum. This is your vacuum line that leads into the intake that gives you your vacuum. And then this is your ABS pump. Here's your connector, which, like I said, I have disconnected, and then have the bulb pulled out of the warning light in the dash. So if I was to remove this, I'd have to redo a lot of these lines, and basically I just didn't feel like doing it. This right here is your junction block or distribution block. It also has your brake level, fluid level sensor, and basically this, because you have discs in the front and drums in the rear, it proportions the pressure coming from the master cylinder appropriately to give you even braking, or most vehicles actually have most of their braking power in the front. But it keeps you from locking up your rear brakes every time you hit the brakes, because as you hit the brakes, all your weight transfers to the front axle, or most of your weight transfers to the front axle and unloads the rear and can cause those to skid. So this is what keeps that from doing it. Now, her light was on, so I don't know if also in these there's a setup of basically a plunger that moves. So if you have the same issue like she did, where one of your brake lines breaks in the rear or the front, it'll move over to that side and block off that side, so you stop losing fluid and you at least have 2-wheel brake instead of 4-wheel brake. So I don't know if that plunger has moved. I'm really hoping not, because there's a procedure where you got to open this up, I think, and do a reset on it, but I'm hoping I don't have to do that. So but what I'm talking about is basically just throw a bunch of fluid in here, open up your bleeder valve at the other end, and just let gravity work its magic, especially if you don't have time to sit around and do it, or if you don't have a second hand to push on the pedal to make it a little bit faster. You can do this. This is if you don't have time to do it, like sit around and wait for it and do it right now. You can do this, come back in a few hours and check it, see if there's fluid dripping out. Then at that point you can cap it off and move to the other side, and it'll continue the same process. So it doesn't get all the air out, but it gets most of it out to where you don't have to fight it a whole lot once you get that helper to help bleed the brakes. So we'll get the fluid in, see how it goes. I gotta get ready for work and see if I can tackle another small little project before I get cleaned up to go to work, and we'll see how it goes and I'll report back. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, for this process to work, you have to leave the cap off of the reservoir, otherwise it'll create a vacuum and not actually allow the fluid to flow through the system. So fill it up like you see I did. It's all the way up at the top. I'm trying to get some of the air out of there, but it's all at an angle. It's at an angle like this, so it's probably not going to come out. Fill it all the way up. Even though you're going to be overfilled, it's not a big deal because you're going to be taking fluid through the system. And then just leave the cap off, got the fluid there, and we'll get that bleeder cracked open and see what happens. All right, so here we are back at the passenger rear wheel, and we are going to see if you can see that. Pop open that bleeder. We're gonna take that rubber cap off, pop open the bleeder, see, hopefully there won't be any fluid right away, but if we leave it open, hopefully come back right before I leave for work, and we'll have some fluid dripping out. All right, it's been about 20-30 minutes, and you can see the fluid level has dropped. So that's a good sign. That means the fluid's starting to move through. I have pressed on the pedal a little bit. You don't want to do that when you have fluid all the way through the system, because then you're going to be sucking air back in every time you let off the pedal. So since we're trying to just get fluid through the system naturally, I'm going to top it off one more time. Probably, like I said, go get changed for work, and then just probably let it sit the rest of the day and let it just do its thing. I doubt it will do a whole lot, but we'll let this sit and just see what happens. What's up, guys? So we're back another day, another morning before work. I'm trying to work this in where I can. We're supposed to be getting some snow. My mom wants her Jeep back, and so we're trying to get this done. The brake fluid was taking a little bit longer than I wanted, so I just left the bleeder valve open and pushed on the pedal a little bit. Like I said, you don't want to do that when there's actually fluid in there all the way through. It's okay to do that to just get fluid through the system, especially if you're replacing lines like what I did. If you do that while there's fluid in there, every time you release the pedal, it's going to suck air back in. So I got it to where it was pushing fluid out on both of the rears, closed it up, filled up the reservoir because I'm going to be bleeding it again later. What I'm going to do now is actually crack one of them open and just let it do gravity bleed this time, this way, and hopefully that will help out. And I'm going to be working on that, and then I'll have my wife probably come help me out later tonight and actually show you guys how to do it properly so that you actually truly get all the air out. So I'll just talk you through it. It's a really simple process. So the 2-person process actually requires that you have 2 people, obviously, since that's the name. But you have to have one person in the driver's seat, and they push on the pedal until they get resistance. They basically pump it up as much as they can. No engine running. It's just sitting there in the car. And then once they get pressure behind the pedal, they push and they hold it. And then the second person, who's at the wheel cylinder or bleed valve, wherever you're at, whether this is the same for rear, front, or even clutch
assembly, bleeding that if it's hydraulic. Have them pump up the pedal till they get resistance, have them hold it, and then you crack open the bleeder, and then they need to let you when the pedal is at the floor, because the pedal's going to go all the way to the floor. Once it's all the way to the floor, then they need to let you know it's at the floor. You close the bleeder valve, and then they repeat the process. If they let off the pedal before you close the bleeder valve, you're going to suck air back into the system, and you're just going to be fighting yourself. So make sure you follow those steps. And that's basically it. You go until you have no more air in the system, fluid looks clean, you know, all that jazz. So it, luckily with doing the gravity bleed that I did, and I kind of massaged the pedal a little bit to get some fluid pushed through the system, it didn't take very long. It only took like 3 or 4 cycles of that before I was like, okay, there's no more air coming out. And you'll know when there's air in there or there's not. But now I just need to adjust the rear drums and adjust the e-brake, which I'll leave a link in the video here. And if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below. And that pretty much wraps up the brakes. I gotta do some other stuff. I've got another video for the fuel pump and filter, and I'm gonna be doing some sensors and stuff on this thing as well, and an entire exhaust system. Yay me. So we'll have videos on all that. So anyways, if you like what you saw, hit that like, subscribe, leave comments in the... Hey guys, one last quick thing. Brakes are a very important part of your car's drivability, in case you didn't know that. Brakes help you stop, they help you control the vehicle, they help you not die, they help you not kill other people. So if you don't know what you're doing or have a question about what you are doing, read your instructions, read your owner's manual, get the factory manual, the Chiltons, the whatever. You know, some of these older cars, you can find the actual factory manuals on eBay, on digital CDs that you can then download. You order the CD and it shows up, and then it downloads on your computer. It's all in PDF format, and they're amazing. I've done it for my 89 and XJ and my 91 YJ. Read the manuals, understand the manuals. If you don't know what you're doing, don't just use my videos. This is the legal disclaimer, because this is brakes. If you don't know what you're doing, get a professional to help you, or take it to a professional and have them do it. Don't do something dumb and think something's half-assed, or even if you don't think it's half-assed, have somebody else check your work if you've never done this before. Brakes are very important. Like I said, it keeps you from dying, keeps you from killing other people. If you don't know what you're doing, get help. Thanks.